Sahana Vavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So this portion in chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, we started it a couple of weeks ago. Very important, profound, because it is going deeper into what you need to do to reach the self. So as we were discussing yesterday also in the Vedanta class, the problem, the impediment between us and the self is nothing but this ego and these desires coming out of the ego. So in fact, we are nothing but the self, the divinity covered by these desires, right? So if you remove this, you reach enlightenment. It's as simple as that or as complicated as that. So the problem is these desires are so deep-rooted that you are completely swept by the thought flow. So you're not able to maintain the constancy of thought. See, when you are able to maintain the constancy of thought, you starve these lower thoughts. That's how you grow spiritually. But we're not able to do that. So in this portion, all he's trying to say is, through every aspect of your life, you have to maintain that constancy. So the fundamental principle of spiritual evolution is sacrifice, right? We've been discussing that. You have to sacrifice this ego. You have to give up these egocentric desires. This I and my. I and I want. To put it simply, there's an I, this individuality, and out of that I come these wants. I want. And you're swept away. Everybody. So you got to sacrifice that. Give up that I, that my. That's the symbolism of that beautiful ritual, the fire worship. So that fire represents Brahman, the reality. So the more you sacrifice, the more Brahman grows, as it were. In the sense, the more you sacrifice, the more spiritual you become. The closer you are to God, divinity. So that ritual only reminds you, right, that this is what you need to do. Your purpose, your mission in life is to sacrifice yourself. So if every aspect of your life you can convert into a sacrifice, that's the idea. You get to the self. So every aspect of your life you must convert into a spiritual exercise. That's all it is. So in 25 we started, right? You must either have a goal of self-development self-evolution. I want to be a better person. I want to be more sacrificial. I want to live in higher level of thinking. This is self-development. And the absolute ideal is self-realization. So these are the two goals. Whichever you can relate to, you got to set it. Number one. And then life starts with receipt of stimuli. So every stimuli must be oblated to the self. You only deal with those sensual experiences which help your spiritual evolution. So your environment, how much you contact the world, all that has to be looked into. That is 26. And in 27, he makes the shift from senses to actions also. Or everything has to be oblated to the self. The yoga of self-control, he calls it. Atma Sanyama Yoga. So just for those who missed it last week, I told you it's there in the book. Swamiji's commentary, those 12 yajñas are given the form of a diagram. So the middle of that diagram is limited ideal, absolute ideal. Yajñas 1 and 2. 3 is perception, 4 is restraint, which we covered in verse 26. Every perception must be offered. In other words, only get into those perceptions which help your spiritual growth. Restraint. Number 4. Even if you do that, your previous perceptions come up, right? That's what we had discussed. You tend to linger in previous perceptions. All of us linger. You may say you don't linger. You want the proof? What is the proof? In all your homes, what is there? 4 pictures after pictures after pictures. Now they're not satisfied with one picture. So I go to some people's home. I said, yeah, I looked at this picture. No, there is more. So that picture itself is, they've got those frames, right, which have multiple pictures. One picture you're not satisfied. Pictures after pictures. Means what are you doing? I'm not against pictures. You are indulging in those experiences which are over. So by reliving them, you are only creating further desires for more experiences. And you are preventing yourself from making use of this present moment for your spiritual growth or even for your material growth. What you have in control right now is your present action. Why don't you enjoy that? When you waste your life in worries of the past, lingering in the past, or reliving the past. So that is control. That is the 4th yajna. Let that perception die once it's over. So you had a nice meal yesterday. Now why do you think about it? It's done, right? You enjoyed that meal. You can't enjoy it now. But this is the disease of the mind. So that is what he's talking about. The 5th yajna. Perception and restraint. 4. So 5th yajna, which we're going to do today, which is the 27th verse, is all these things, including actions, which he calls here pranas, the prana karma, have to be oblated to your spiritual ideal. He calls that the fire of the yoga of self-control. And what is kindled is wisdom. So I told you, yajna has 2 main aspects, offering and kindling. So if you convert every aspect of your life into an offering and kindling, that's the idea behind it. So don't get caught up in the words. The idea is every aspect of life, that constancy has to be. So before we get there, everybody clear? Till now, I've just recaptured the whole thing. Yeah. Agamani, you had something?
Hariom Gautam ji, quick question on perception. So we try and make the environment around us conducive, the stimuli which we are taking as conducive. But when the perception is actually happening, there is no thought of sacrifice. So is that still considered as sacrifice because we are trying to make the environment conducive for our spiritual growth, or there has to be a thought of sacrifice during the perception itself?
See, as I was explaining even yesterday, when we were talking about the background awareness, right? I was giving the example, those of you who are not there, the simplest example to understand is a person taking his client out for dinner, right? I give a simple, which is relatable. Now, I told you, you are enjoying with your client, you're talking about his family, you're enjoying the meal, you're ordering a nice drink or whatever you're doing. All that you're doing, you're not consciously thinking, but background, you know why you're doing all this is to protect your business. So, whether you're talking to him, walking with him, joking with him, eating, drinking, all that is backed by the thought of business, right? So that's what you need to be aware. That is what is yajna. Whatever you're doing, you should be doing for the sake of the self, right? It doesn't have to be every time you're thinking yajna, yajna, yajna. Straight asylum you'll go. You understand? You see, if you take this literally, you don't know what you're going to get into. It's a background awareness. So the only time you'll have to consciously think is when? When your thought goes to something which is not what you're planning, what you're supposed to be doing. Right? See, suppose you are gaining the knowledge now. You've planned this. This is the act of gaining knowledge for the higher. You don't have to consciously think every time I'm gaining knowledge. But suppose your mind slips into your work. Oh, tomorrow I have an important meeting. That's when you got to bring your mind back to the class, right? So the conscious effort comes only when it deviates from the plan which you've set. So when you understand this, it becomes simple. Otherwise, nobody can understand. How can you maintain awareness while you're doing your day-to-day actions, right? It's a background awareness which is always there. Why you're doing what you're doing. Got it? Preeti?
Yes. Gautamji, you mentioned that everything like to view as a spiritual exercise, and it can be boiled down to two aspects. One, offering, and then the other one, can you just repeat that and explain it? And then secondly, you were just speaking to kind of like, if the mind kind of deviates, which happens, to bring it back, but can you elaborate on some specific additional techniques to do that?
See, the yajna ritual, which is the fire worship, is the fundamental ritual in the Vedas. It has two aspects, right? The fire is a symbol of the divinity. And because fire is heat and light, both enlivening, which enliven life. So it's a very powerful symbol of the unseen reality, Brahman, the divinity. And not only is the fire the symbol of the self, it's also the means to get to the self. Because you give grain into the fire, that's the ritual. Grain represents your body. your individuality, because your body is made up of grain or food, in other words. So offering food is offering yourself symbolically. In other words, sacrificing your ego and egocentric desires. So the more you sacrifice, that's the offering. Your spiritual growth is kindling. That's the second aspect. The fire shoots up, the flames shoot up. You get it? So the idea is every aspect of your life should be a sacrifice to the self. That's how you grow spiritually. Because the impediment to you, between you and the self, is nothing but your ego and desires, which I explained. So this fundamental concept is what makes you spiritual. Now, why they harp on this throughout is everything a human being does is completely opposite. There's no sacrifice. There's only aggrandize. What can I get for myself, my family? There's no concept of sacrifice at all. Even when you approach God, that is what he said in the second chapter in the Gita. The people are doing Vedic rituals. They are all interested in pleasure, power, heaven. They're not interested in samadhi, in enlightenment. He says that. If those of you who want to read it up, you read it. 42, 43, 44 of chapter 2. Very strong words he uses. Yam imam pushpitam vacham veda vadarata, reveling in the letter of the Vedas, the flowery speech, pushpitam vacham, beautiful speech, mantras, kama bhogaishvarya, they just want fulfillment of desires, enjoyment, power. They don't want anything else. So, and then the second aspect, what you asked, is when you are gaining this knowledge, your intellect grows with the knowledge. So intellect alone can control the mind, which deviates from the chosen path. So keep gaining the knowledge, building your intellect. That's how you bring the mind into the present. Otherwise, you may say all of it, nothing will happen. As long as the mind is stronger than the intellect, it will slip. That's why our minds slip all the time, no matter what we do. Because our intellects are weak. Hmm. 27.
सर्वाणीन्द्रियकर्माणि प्राणकर्माणि चापरे आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ जुह्वते ज्ञानदीपिते.
Others sacrifice all the functions of the senses and the functions of the vital airs into the fire of the yoga of self-control, kindled by wisdom. So here he calls the functions of the senses and the pranas. So prana karma means the organs of action. Indriya karma means the functions of the senses. Prana karma, the functions of the vital airs, meaning action. So whatever you see, whatever you hear, whatever you do, in other words, the fire of the yoga of self-control, you must make sure it is oblated to the self. It is in conjunction with your goal of self-realization. And if you do that, what is kindled is wisdom, the knowledge of the self. You get closer to the self. So, the whole effort is introverted. You must scan yourself to see whatever I'm doing, is it taking me to the self? So this body needs to be fed, nourished, exercised, because that will take me to the self. You need a healthy body. You do that. You need relaxation. I'm not against that. So people, you may want to watch an hour or two of TV in the evenings. What's wrong with that? But because it helps you relax, and that keeps you fresh for the next day, right? But if you indulge, you want to get up early in the morning to study, and you're going on watching 4 hours instead of the 2 hours that you assigned, that's when you got to, this is called self-control. You got to control yourself. Same thing with your food, with your socializing, everything. There has to be discipline. Where you lose your discipline is where you are in trouble. Even mentally. Okay, I speak to my children, they are living their life once a week, whatever they want, not what you want. And then, but before or after that, you're thinking what they're doing. That is lack of self-control. You're indisciplined mentally. So even emotions have to be kept in their place. Otherwise, you become possessive, obsessive. You know how many children were estranged with their parents because they are constantly on their head. Not how many, all. It is a rare exception where there is no estrangement. Self-control. So here he's using one. See, earlier he was using perceptions, hearing. Here he's talking about one yoga of self-control, which means every aspect of life, all the aspects are directed towards that one goal of enlightenment. This is 27. So now that he's brought in action, in 28 he continues. What are the types of action? See, it's not just you're doing something to help, to sacrifice. What are the grades? You should be doing things which are subtler, not grosser. And that's what he educates us. One of the fascinating parts of the Gita, verses of the Gita, the 28th verse, where he talks about the various types of giving, depending on its quality.
Gautamji, what is the difference between the second and the third and the fourth yajna when he's talking about perception and action, and the fifth where he combines the two?
See, I told you the third one he's talking about the perception, right? Sound is offered and the hearing is kindled. In other words, he's talking about the process of perception to be converted to a yajna. Fourth is that perception which comes up should not be indulged in. He's breaking it down. You get it? So whatever perception you are going through, that's why I told you, right? Lingering. So 3 and 4 are talking of perception. Here he's bringing in all encompassing. Perception and action. All have to be oblated. So there is a completeness once he says 5. It's not one aspect of life. What he's trying to say, all aspects of life. And now, see how scientifically he moves. Now he moves to, okay, action also you are doing spiritually, but what is the effect it's having on the world? Even that you need to look into. If you can do a superior action which is helping in a better way, why should you do an inferior form of giving? You understand? So it telescopes one into the other. And all of you should remember the basic principle that every aspect of your life needs to be scrutinized. Because anywhere it slips, that's the problem. See, yesterday we were in that context of that flooding and all, right? Something came up on some sort of a documentary on these dam bursts, And you know how they burst, the dam. You know how much water a dam has? It's like a city of water, literally. Imagine the whole of Manhattan, Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn. That's the size of some of these dams. It's like the whole. Imagine how much water, and it's not 1 foot. It's 100 feet. So that structure, the concrete structure which is holding that whole thing in place, how strong it has to be. So how does the dam burst? The pressure comes, a lot of rain or whatever, and there's a small weakness somewhere. And that crack is what burst the whole thing. So there have been huge ones. They were showing somewhere China and Russia and Indonesia, the whole villages have been swept away. In minutes it happens, once it breaks. So it's like that. What I'm trying to say is, I've damned the whole thing. Only one crack is there. What do you mean only one crack is there? Everything I did, 2 years I've been constructing this, one crack is there. What's your problem? I have no problem. Whole thing will go from there. So that's what happens with the mind. You say, okay, I'm looking into this, I'm looking into this, I'm looking into that. But where is that weakness? Where all your thoughts are concentrated on? That's the problem. So that where you are not doing that self-control is where you've lost out spiritually. So everything is there, but all the time I'm thinking of my money. What's the point of all the other self-control? Everything is getting wasted here. Money, 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 money. How much this costs, how much that costs, how much I have, how much. So there are fellows with that. Others don't have a problem with money. Whatever's coming, whatever's going, they couldn't be bothered. But what people are thinking of them, morning, noon, night. Who's insulting me? Who's thinking of me? That you may not have a problem. Invariably, children. Morning, noon, and night. Children, children, children. What is happening with it? It's like that. So think of the mind as that dam. Or not mind, the intellect. Mind is the water. Everywhere it's good. One place it's weak. Where all the water go? You can't say, hey, water, what's wrong with you, my God? Water, Mr. Water, what's wrong with you? Can't you go everywhere else? Why you have to go there only? The water will say, no, there only I'll go. That's your mind. Why do you disturb me in that area only? That area only I'm going to disturb. Because that's your weakness. You understand? So that's why he says, it's not a plural. Do this you control, do that control. It's one control. Everything has to be controlled for the self. That's the point he's trying to make between 3, 4 and 5. So how the whole thing starts, perception, how it gets into your system, and then not only does it remain that time, it comes again, past perceptions. All that has to be controlled. But it's not just that, every other aspect of your life. In fact, after 28, he goes even into pranas, breathing, to complete the picture. You'll get to that. You get it? You can't say that he's now in 27, he's covered this. Whatever 29, he's saying that. He's getting into every aspect in detail. Yes, Akhila.
So I have two questions related to this verse.
Yeah.
So when he says functions of the vital airs, can it be understood as ablation of the functions of the mind and the intellect?
Vital air is action. It's not mind intellect. Prana is action. So it's a specific usage. You call it karma indriyas, prana karma. That's what it calls here. So you need to understand the usage. He's talking. See, mind intellect is understood. When you're perceiving, you're processing it with your mind intellect. Action also, mind intellect is understood. You don't act, body doesn't act on its own. It's either the mind or intellect or combination of both. They are the common factor. He's talking about the starting and the ending.
And the other question is, so he talks about self-restraint in the verse before and self-control here. In the previous verse, is it the gross intellect that's involved in the self-restraint, and here it's both gross and the subtle, because the subtle intellect is setting the direction and the gross intellect is working. So
Why are you bothered about the working of it? He's talking about what has to be controlled. So you function, you work, you focus on that. You get it? Not what is controlling. Now that we've understood separately. When the intellect functions in the world, it's gross. When the intellect focuses on something beyond the world, it's subtle. Right? That's it. Nothing more in that intellect. So we use generally the term intellect. He's talking here what you have to control, not with what. So don't bring that in. You get it? See, this is important for all of you because this is how you become precise in your thinking. You're talking of one aspect, you need to digest that. It's so important. You bring in other things, you won't understand this, right? So that discipline in thinking is important. You see what I just said? He's saying what to control. No, you're not talking about what is the equipment which controls. That's not the focus here. 28.
Dravya yajña sapo yajña yoga yajña tatha pare swadhyaya yajñasya yataya samshita vrataha.
Yet others again offer wealth as sacrifice, dravya yajna, austerity as sacrifice, tapo yajna, yoga as sacrifice, yoga yajna, and ascetics of rigid vows offer study and wisdom as sacrifice. Swadhyaya Jnana Yajna. So, shifting now to complete responses in terms of helping others. He already covered response to help others in the previous verse, right? The vital airs. Now he's talking about the grades of help. So we have always talked about karma, service as a fundamental spiritual discipline. You all know that. In fact, I was talking to the in a corporate talk this last week in Manhattan. Hundreds of people attending, very well received. So one of the principles which nobody talks about should be taught to the youngsters when they're literally in kindergarten onwards. That happiness true happiness lies in service, not in getting. The whole world is deluded to believe happiness lies in getting. No doubt there's an instant happiness, which is why the delusion is there. But it can never last. It soon yields to sorrow, suffering, bitterness, hatred. That's the world today. So if the world understands a simple truth that true happiness lies in not thinking of yourself, in actually serving. It is the selfishness which gives agitation. So if you think of something beyond your selfishness, you will be peaceful. There's no other way to peace. So that fundamental truth one has to understand. Whole life changes just by this one sentence. Of course, you can't just say serve and you'll start serving. You need to study and build your intellect. Only that can keep it going, because the mind slips to selfishness sooner or later. So it's not as easy as saying serve and the whole world will start serving. It doesn't work that way. You've got to build your intellect to be able to do it. That's why daily study and reflection is the most important thing. So here he's talking about what are the grades of giving. No doubt you may be a giver. First of all, that itself is a big question mark. Everybody is a taker. But what are you giving? So the lowest form of giving, he says, dravya yajña. Dravya means wealth. So no doubt wealth is a form of giving. You're helping others. No doubt about it. But it's like you have $100, you give $1. It is giving. But it's a low form. What you don't need. It doesn't really, it doesn't come from the heart really. But the second aspect, tapo yajña, is austerity as sacrifice. Austerity in the sense effort. See, suppose you have $100, you give $1. It's no big deal. But you have $10, you give $1. That is a big deal. It's because you are sacrificing something which you need to give. So that's a superior form of giving. You all understand? Because if you give your surplus, you're not sacrificing anything. What are you giving up? Nothing. Interesting. The effort. So you have been working hard for the day, and you just come and you're sitting on the couch watching a show in the evening after a hard day's work, and you really need that rest. And your neighbor calls you, good friend of yours. Look, I have 5 guests showing up unexpectedly, They came and I need to make dinner for them. They say, of course, I'll help you. You dial, speed dial, take out. And you have it delivered. And she says, oh, thank you so much. That's a big help, Argument. No doubt that's a help. You did something for her. But she says, you make that, this is a very important client for my husband. They're coming over unexpectedly. And that dish you make is so good. I think they will love that. Can you come and help me make it? One is takeout. That restaurant which I know, that makes it as good as, don't worry, I'll order it for you. Other is you go there and help her. Spend a couple of hours. Now, which is a superior sacrifice? Because you have given up your relaxation time to help. So true giving is when you are giving up something to help. That is a far more powerful form of giving. But the implication is it's still at the material level, physical level. Superior to that is yoga yajna. Yoga here refers to the mind intellect, the internal organs, which help you gain yoga enlightenment. So that's the implication. The other terminology, how it was used those days. So superior to physical and material giving is the giving of emotions and knowledge, even though it may be worldly. See, like typical example is in an orphanage. The children are given food and shelter, material things they're given. But what those young children crave for is emotions. They don't have parents. I've been told people who go to these orphanages that literally when they're leaving, the young children are clinging on, dragging themselves on the floor. Please don't leave. Please. It's literally like that. So giving them a meal and all is not a big deal, or even going and cooking for them, but giving emotions. Like so many people, there are some people who go to the hospital, where the relatives are not there. Person is sick. They want emotion. They don't want a meal. But even that is limited, right? It has a shelf value. Then you give a person knowledge, education. See, you give them a meal is one service, but you teach them how to earn for themselves. You've given them meals for life through that gift of knowledge. You teach them something which they can become self-sufficient. Far superior. See, like people give beggar, you give them a meal. What happens? 3 hours later, they are back to square one. Again, they have to beg. What are you doing to help them? You're making them more dependent on begging. You want to help, teach them something. So, wealth, effort, emotion, knowledge. These are all worldly, but they're still higher grades. He says, ascetics of rigid vows. People who really, rigid vow means who are actually putting in spiritual effort in what? Self-study. Swadhyaya means one's own. One's own. Dhyaya, study. Swadhyaya means self-study. So what is the implication here? What is the greatest gift you can give to any person? Is the knowledge of self. Is Vedanta, the knowledge of Brahman, the reality. Because every other gift is temporary. This is the only gift which is permanent. Every gift is finite. This gift takes you to the infinite self. Not only does it give you permanent peace in the world, to the extent you gain the knowledge, it takes you to ultimate permanence, immortality, infinity, self-realization. So it's by far the greatest gift that can be given to a human being. But to give it, you must have it, no? Right? How can you give something when you don't have it? So what is the greatest service you can do to the world is lock yourself in your room and study the self. Literally, that's what he said. Ascetics of rigid vows offer study and wisdom as sacrifice. Because if those great, that is what Guru Purnima is, you're remembering the great souls, not your immediate Guru. Of course, that is your primary obligation. But Where did he or she get the knowledge? From their guru. Where did he or she get it? There. So there is a lineage of sages and saints who've done tapas, who've put in that rigid vows. Samshita vrata, to gain the knowledge. They have renounced the world and put in their heart and soul to gain knowledge of self. And that tapas you're enjoying through gaining this wisdom and implementing it in your life. So you want to help the world, go and gain the knowledge. That's the greatest thing you can do. Literally, that is the truth. What did Buddha do? He just went and gained the knowledge. Till today, billions of people are benefiting. What did Krishna do? Anybody, any of these saints, they just went and gained the knowledge. That's a saint. Automatically it flows. All the speaking talent and all, I know fellows, great speakers, absolutely zero insight. There's no study, there's no wisdom. Just talk. You may electrify the world, but if you don't have it, you can't give it. It will not have an impact. It cannot. So, see, Swami Ramatirtha, he was in the Himalayas. This is 1900 around. And the Maharaja of Teri Garhwal was a small princely state then. He offered him those days 2 lakhs of rupees. 2 lakh means 200,000 rupees. Those days. You understand? 200,000. Imagine it's like what was $200,000 in 1900? It's like 200 million today, literally. So he got that kind of a princely sum. He said, you take this money, start a mission. He said, no, first let me gain the knowledge. He had just come to the Himalayas that time. He was so brilliant. But he had not reached the self yet. So he said, no, first let me realize the self. Then we'll see. Actually, he said that. So that is what we're talking about. They did that. And it flowed. He never wrote a word. His followers in America took some notes and sent it to his followers in India. He never wrote anything. He died at 33. After his death, they published. These were some of his talks. And nobody knows him. You won't know him. You know all the others who don't come close. And literally 70 years later or whatever, 50, 60 years later, they were picked up by my guru, Swamiji. He got the knowledge from those books, real knowledge. So that's what makes an impact. Is your study and wisdom. You may say, what about the world? Even relatively. See, to the extent you become spiritual, you serve. So the world needs people who serve, right? World doesn't need social service. Social service is being done. Problem is the people who do it are such a small proportion. So you need to increase that proportion. That comes with Vedanta, nothing else. Like Victor Hugo said, there is always more misery in the lower classes than there is humanity in the higher. This is the perennial problem of humanity. There's always more misery in the masses than there is humanity in the classes. Right? The lack of humanity is the problem, not the lack of wealth. There's no humanity at all. How many billions you want? But they won't give. So it's incredible. Incredible. So how you can inculcate that spirit of giving is Vedanta. So not only your spiritual development, the world will become a totally different place. So this knowledge has to be learned and propagated. There's no other way. Yes, Ramya.
Hari Om Gautam ji. So I'm just trying to understand that, we really try to sacrifice, but we really try to impart the emotion and the knowledge in the mind, and we're really trying to give all of that. But there's the dichotomy of people always not valuing what you're doing, or almost to a precarious situation where they take advantage of you, which kind of sometimes becomes negative for you. So how do you deal with that kind of you're always constantly battling that in your mind? I really want to give, I really want to help, but I'm also worried all the time in situations where it comes back to me in a not good manner.
See, first of all, when you give, it's one-sided. You understand? You give because you ought to give. Don't worry about the person. Why are you looking for appreciation or acknowledgement from them? Let them live their life. Number one. Number two, taking advantage comes when you give people who don't deserve to be given. It's like giving a drug addict money and you say he took advantage and he bought drugs. Is that a person to give money? So, when you give, number one, it's for your own spiritual growth. You ought to do it. You do it. Number two, it should be done with intellect. Giving has to be done to a person who deserves the service. So I'll go to since we're on the topic, there's a verse in the Gita which he says that Datavyam yaditi danam. A true gift is that which ought to be given. Datavya means which ought to be given. Diyate anupakarine, with no expectation in return. Nothing expected, including acknowledgement. Deshe kale patra, at the right place, at the right time, to a worthy recipient. Tad danam satvikam smritam. That gift alone is a satvik, a real gift. You understand? So you do it because you ought to do it, and do it to those who deserve it. Where's the problem? In fact, a giver looks for takers. Suppose everybody is giver, then who's going to take? You understand? Look for takers only. Why are you complaining that takers? Give. But of course, use your intellect. Those who need it should be, who deserve it. Sneha? Disappeared.
No, I'm right here. Hi, Guruji. Gautamji, it's uncanny how similar my question is to the previous asker. So I won't belabor it, but it's how do you know when you've entered into the realm of overgiving, and how do you know that the person is sattvic? It's kind of like a premonition that you wouldn't really have. Like you have to get to know them first, and then this is actually very common. It happens to me all the time. I get taken advantage of, and it's only at that stage that I realize that it's likely my fault this happened. So what are some questions that you can ask yourself to know when, like, where and how to set spiritual boundaries?
See, first of all, in giving, you're saying over giving. It is an attitude. So there's no such thing as over giving. It's an attitude of always wanting to serve. Okay? It's an attitude. Number one, it's an internal feeling which should be there, which is all pervading always. There's no over or under there. Now, obviously, like I said, you and the other person before you who asked, you're not using your intellect because it's not grown. So you're giving impulsively, which is what most people do who are givers. They just give based on emotions. It's like you see a beggar suffering, you feel bad for the person. So to remove your sense of feeling bad, that agitation within you, you're giving. Actually, it's selfish. Impulsive giving is always selfish. Because you're giving it to feel better. Now you give, oh, now I feel good. But what is that person doing with it? So giving is not as simple as it sounds. So you need to be patient, analyze what is that person, what is the effect of your gift. So yes, take your time. What is the problem there? Why are you being impulsive? And overgiving, undergiving, that comes with again intellect. You have X amount of income, let's say, I'm talking about money now. You have your obligations you have to fulfill. You can't just give and your children are starving. I'm just extending it so you understand. So you need to analyze what is your capacity to give. That's it. That is why sometimes people who are well wishers, they ask me, what do you think I should give? I said, how can I tell you what you should give? Because that's why we don't fix any amount or limits or suggestions, because each person's situation is totally different. So you must give completely depending upon your capacity. So analyze that. What is it that you can comfortably do? It could not necessarily money, it could be effort also. You can't sign up for serving 10 hours in a day. What about your work? What about your family? So everything has to be proportionate. So make sure it's not impulsive. Think about it. Analyze. And you should be fine. So obviously you're not using your intellect. Common thing. Most people don't give. Those who give don't use intellect. So therefore, is a disaster everywhere. And most people don't have intellect. Those who do use it to manipulate others to get something, which is the world. Now to have intellect and give. Now you tell me. Where is it? That only comes with a lot of education and understanding. That's what you're trying to do. To be a giver with intellect. I mean, literally you have to be Krishna. Aggressively good. Giving and making sure you use your intellect to analyze the effect. You've got to it's not easy. But at least to whatever extent you can, you must use both. You must want to give and with thinking. There's no problem. You will never take advantage of anyone. Nobody will be able to take advantage of you. Impossible. Both sides. That's Vedanta. So Yudhishthira was a giver. That's the whole Mahabharata. You all remember, right? But he didn't use his intellect. So he was taken advantage of by Duryodhana, the Kaurava, and completely destroyed. He took away everything from him, including his wife, his money, his kingdom. Everything was taken away. That's what they're trying to show. What's the point of being Dharma Raja, great giver, great righteous, when you don't use your intellect? It'll all go. So how they were conquered is with Krishna, who was a giver, but he used his intellect, made sure the Kauravas were destroyed. It needed thinking. Right. So those of you who missed the Guru Purnima talk on Thursday, it was a very inspiring talk by Swamiji. The talk is still there on our website on the home page till Thursday. Keep it for a week. So make sure you listen. It's a time of the year to reaffirm your commitment to yourself that you must follow the knowledge of these great souls to grow spiritually. So any questions, we can take them up. We're back to our usual schedule on Wednesday. I'll see you for the Q&A. Hari Om.